Good morning, everyone. Welcome. My name is Katsuzen Chris King, and I'm curious to know how many people are new or fairly new. Thank you. For those who don't know me, I want to just give a little background and introduce myself. So I live with my wife in Windsor, here in Sonoma County, and we have 3 adult children, and they live close by. And you may have seen on my bio, I lead the Windsor Zen group in my hometown. And we started the group in the yoga studio in Windsor about 5 years ago. And we eventually moved to a neighborhood community center in Santa Rosa when the yoga studio was sold. And then during the pandemic, that center was a nice community neighborhood center, closed, it was sold. And so now we're meeting at Finley Community Center in Santa Rosa. So we meet once a month in person, and that's pretty much, we've met over the years, maybe once or twice a month in person on Sundays. All of our events, our sittings are online. So the majority of our sittings and practices is done online. So in addition to Zen, I practice martial arts and I teach martial arts in Healdsburg. Mainly I've been teaching to children, but now I've started teaching adult classes. And my focus has mainly been Aikido. Our main teacher in the school where I'm studying is Hideki Shirohira Sensei. And he had his dojo in Mountain View. He lives in the South Bay, and he founded the Pacific Aikido Federation. So besides his training in martial arts, Shirohira Sensei studied Zen in the lineage of Omori Sogen. Omori Sogen was a well-known Rinzai teacher, quite famous actually. And that lineage traces back to a very renowned Kendo and Zen master named Yamaoka Teshu. He was known as, not homeless, yeah, I forget it, sort of like homeless Teshu, but yeah, he was very poor and a pretty amazing martial artist. But their school combines martial arts, calligraphy, and Zen. It was mainly Kendo in the time of Yamaoka Teshu, but now they have a center in Hawaii and they practice karate and other martial arts along with calligraphy and Zen. So I've been busy with my teaching here in Sonoma County, and so I've been doing it for 14 or 15 years. And it's interesting because I think because I really enjoy it, the classes have grown, and so now I'm teaching 3 children's classes and 1 adult class. And just over the years, it's kind of expanded, and so it's been nice to see that. But I'm a retired bilingual school teacher, so I have a connection to the schools, and so I bring my Zen practice, mindfulness, and my past teaching experience into my classes in Aikido, martial arts. So some of you may be wondering why I have been a little absent up here for the last couple months. And the reason, one of the main reasons is that our Zen group, our sitting group in Windsor, we've been doing a 2-month Ango retreat. So we started about the same time that you had Ongo here. And as I said before, most of our practice has been online via Zoom. When we started, we had a few members and they moved to the East Coast and the Midwest. So they've been able to connect with us in our sittings. So we're following a lighter schedule than the typical Ongo here. And it's doable for people who are working so they can practice with us during the day. And we have 3 morning sittings, 2 afternoon sittings, and 2 evening sittings. So the people in the Midwest can sit in the afternoon, that'll be their evening. And, or actually it's the other way around, that our evening sitting, the people in the Midwest can sit, and then our later sitting, or actually the early sitting, the afternoon sitting, the people on the East Coast can sit with us. So it works out so we can cover the whole country, so to speak. So our Shuso is Susan Geshin, who is a resident here for many years. And it's been very beneficial for our group to have her, and bringing her experience here and knowledge of the forms and stuff has really been helpful for us. And she's put a lot in, so we've developed this Ongo, which is a little unique. We're studying Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, Suzuki Roshi's book. And every week we have usually four readings. So we've broken the chapters up and we're reading a chapter a day. And then on Fridays we meet after our morning sitting. So we have Monday, Wednesday, Friday morning sittings at 6:30. And then at 7, we'll either have a reading, or on Friday, we'll have a little talk and discussion. So we break into breakout rooms and discuss. So it's been really, it's been a really good experience to rediscover parts of Suzuki Roshi's book. There's some of it, I'm very familiar with, and I'm sure a lot of you are, but there's sections that, and I'll read some today, that you just kind of are in the background, but when you reread them, they come out, and things can be very impactful for you. So, so it was kind of interesting because Geshin's theme, just coincidentally or serendipitously, was the same as the Ongo theme here about Tozan. Tozan was a teacher, and he was actually the founder of the Soto lineage. The To comes from the name Tozan, and there's a famous story of him crossing a stream and seeing his reflection in the stream. And in that moment, he had an awakening to his true self. And so Geshin didn't know that was also the theme here, so it was a nice connection. So I wanted to mention something that happened to me the other day in my martial arts class. So I do take a class once a week, and our teacher has been sick. He's been away. He's been dealing with some health issues. So we have a new teacher that's come in. And this teacher has been focusing mainly on weapons. So in Aikido, we have 3 main weapons, which is a wooden sword, a wooden staff, and a wooden knife. And we've been practicing with the sword and the staff. And it's a different school. It's a little more aggressive and fast than our school. And we were practicing a kata. And kata, if you don't know, is a series of movements, that sequence that's scripted. So you follow all the movements as much as you can, following that sequence. Well, my teacher had talked to me about how to hold the staff. So there's a way to cover your head um, and your front hand. I learned to not expose my fingers, but he was teaching his style that you grab the staff, your fingers hold it, so it's not struck out of your hand. He mentioned his teacher would hit people, hit their staff out of their hands at times. So I was started in on the kata. I hadn't been there for a while. Actually, we hadn't done it in 3 weeks, and I've been busy with our retreat. And so we started this one that I had practiced a little, and I was putting my mind in that kata completely. And in an instant, he whacked it out of my hand and went flying, landed on the floor. And in that moment, my whole being just kind of deflated, like, oh man. And actually my motivation just went, oh. And this had happened before to me, and a teacher, I had taken some classes with a teacher in the same school. So I think it may be a part of their teaching style, but there was a feeling of, oh yeah, I just want to leave, or I don't want to go on anymore in this. And it was like half-heartedly finishing the class. And it really affected me. I felt humiliated, I guess you could say. And it was just a shock because at that, I've been used to quiet and not confronting. It's not necessarily confronting, but in our style and in Aikido in general, we blend. And so this was not blending at all. And the sound, of course, was right next to my head. So, of course, I picked up my staff and carried on. But it stayed with me, and I felt like, oh no, I'm going to leave this. I'm not going to continue. But then we had our Friday discussion yesterday, and I've been kind of obsessing over it, even all the training, but it just affected me. And we got into our discussion, and after the discussion, it just had dissipated all of those feelings. And even now, reading Suzuki Roshi and being with our group in that Sangha, I think there was a healing, and I could see it in a different light. And it's not to say that I will stay with it. I do want to continue with it, but I mean, if that keeps happening, I don't know that I will continue. Maybe I just have to say it's not for me, and I have too much going on, and I can't keep up. But I like that particular style in the martial art, and I want to continue with it. So I kind of was able to rejuvenate my spirit in a sense after the reading. So what I thought I would do is read a little of what we discussed this past week from Suzuki Roshi's book. And one kind of nice thing is I've noticed just listening to the talk sometimes is a very different feeling than reading them. You hear someone else's voice, or you receive it in a different way. So I'll read from some excerpts from some of these. So this is a section called Believing in Nothing. I discovered that it's necessary, absolutely necessary, to believe in nothing. That is, we have to believe in something which has no form and no color, something which exists before all forms and colors appear. This is a very important point. No matter what God or doctrine you believe in, if you become attached to it, your belief will be based more or less on a self-centered idea. You strive for a perfect faith in order to save yourself. But it will take some time to attain such a perfect faith. You will be involved in an idealistic practice. In constantly seeking to actualize your ideal, you will have no time for composure. But if you're always prepared for accepting everything we see as something appearing from nothing, knowing that there is some reason why the phenomenal existence of such and such form and color appears, then at that moment you will have perfect composure. So it is absolutely necessary for everyone to believe in nothing. But I don't mean voidness. There is something, but that something is something which is always prepared for taking some particular form, and it has some rules or theory or truth in its activity. This is called Buddha nature, or Buddha himself. When this existence is personified, we call it Buddha. When we understand it as the ultimate truth, we call it Dharma. And when we accept the truth and act as a part of the Buddha, or according to the theory, we call ourselves Sangha. So the three treasures. But even though there are three Buddha forms, it is one existence which has no form or color. And it is always ready to take form and color. This is not just theory. This is not just the teaching of Buddhism. This is absolutely necessary. This is the absolutely necessary understanding of our life. Without this understanding, our religion will not help us. We will be bound by our religion, and we'll have more trouble because of it. If you become the victim of Buddhism, I may be very happy, but you'll not be so happy. So this kind of understanding is very, very important. When you're practicing Zazen, you may hear the rain dropping from the roof in the dark. Later, the wonderful mist will be coming through the big trees. And still later, when people start to work, they will see the beautiful mountains. But some people will be annoyed if they hear the rain when they're lying in beds in the morning. May not be able to sleep and may want to skip Zazen in the morning because they do not know that later they will see the beautiful sun rising from the east. If our mind is concentrated on ourselves, we'll have this kind of worry. But if we accept ourselves as the embodiment of the truth, or Buddha nature, we will have no worry. We will think, now it is raining, but we don't know what will happen in the next moment. By the time we go out, it may be a beautiful day, or a stormy day. Since we don't know, let's appreciate the sound of the rain now. This kind of attitude is the right attitude if you understand yourself as a temporal embodiment of the truth. That's a wonderful expression. You will have no difficulty whatsoever. You will appreciate your surroundings, and you will appreciate yourself as a wonderful part of Buddha's great activity, even in the midst of difficulties. This is our way of life. So that was his chapter, believing in nothing. So nothingness, something that's ready to accept form and color. He says, since we don't know, let's appreciate the sound of the rain. This is don't know mind. When we were reading this, I happened to have the card Broshi's done his calligraphy on only don't know. And I was able to show it to the group, so it was very nice. Only don't know is an expression by the Korean Zen teacher, Daesan Sanin. He used it quite a bit in his dialogues with his students. Emotionally, we have many problems, but these problems are not actual problems. They're something created. They are problems pointed out by our self-centered ideas or views. Because we point out something, there are problems. but actually it's not possible to point out anything in particular. Happiness is sorrow, sorrow is happiness. There is happiness in difficulty, difficulty in happiness. Even though the ways we feel are different, they're not really different. In essence, they are the same. This is the true understanding transmitted from Buddha to us. The Zen poem says, after the wind stops, I see a flower falling because of the singing bird. Because of the singing bird, I find the mountain calmness. Before something happens in the realm of calmness, we do not feel the calmness. Only when something happens within it do we find the calmness. There is a Japanese saying, for the moon, there is the cloud. For the flower, there is the wind. When we see a part of the moon covered by a cloud or a tree or a weed, we feel how round the moon is. But when we see the clear moon without anything covering it, we don't feel that roundness the same way we do when we see it through something else. So I recall reading this metaphor, and I kind of had trouble accepting it because it sounded like he was saying when the moon is without any other objects around, it's not, you don't see it as round as you do with other objects. The point he's making here is that the moon exists in a way with our daily life. It's like the coming together of the absolute and the relative, as we say. And he goes on to explain that a little more. When you're doing Zazen, you are within the complete calmness of your mind. You do not feel anything, you just sit. But the calmness of your sitting will encourage you in your everyday life. So actually you'll find the value of Zen in your everyday life rather than while you sit. But this does not mean you should neglect Zazen. Even though you do not feel anything when you sit, if you do not have this Zazen experience, you cannot find anything. You just find weeds or trees or clouds in your daily life. You do not see the moon. That is why you are always complaining about something. But for Zen students, a weed, which for most people is worthless, is a treasure. With this attitude, whatever you do, life becomes an art. So I kind of relate to this in our everyday life, that in a sense everything is sacred. And some Christian theologians say everything is holy, an expression of its holiness. I think when we come out of the nothingness, then we appreciate everything in that way. When we are in difficulty or distress, there we have enlightenment. When we are in defilement, there we should have composure. Usually we find it very difficult to live in the effervescence of life, but it is only within the effervescence of life that we can find the joy of eternal life. So, the way he expresses and the words he uses are, for me, very penetrating and very unique. Just to say the word effervescence, but I know there's been expressions like a flashing in the phenomenal world in the utter darkness. We return to the utter darkness. I'll just read one little part here, and then I have another. Does anyone have a watch? Do you know what time it is?
It's 11:30.
11:30. Okay, thank you. To practice Zazen with a group is the most important thing for Buddhism and for us, because This practice is the original way of life. Without knowing the origin of things, we cannot appreciate the result of our life's effort. Our effort must have some meaning. To find the meaning of our effort is to find the original source of our effort. We should not be concerned about the result of our effort before we know its origin. So he opens this, to practice Zazen with a group is the most important thing for Buddhism and for us, because this practice is the original way of life. So I think we feel that when we practice here, we practice with a community. It's a little different when we're doing it online. Here we have the opportunity to do oryoki together, to chant together, to bow together, to work together. So it's a wonderful opportunity. I wanted to say a little more. So whatever difficulties or challenges we may be facing, from, for instance, getting a stick knocked out of our hands in a martial arts class to losing our possessions in a wildfire, or facing life-threatening disease, we have these teachings and training that cultivates us in the sense of what Roshi calls imperturbable composure, or composure in the midst of defilement and difficulties. I'm grateful we have these teachings and this place here to protect, to preserve and make available Suzuki Roshi's teachings, Wang Roshi's teachings in spirit. It's a place of healing and an anchor to ground us in times of turbulence, especially now with what we see, it's convergence of challenges globally. So I wanted to end with a poem by Dogen Zenji. Dogen, if you're not aware of Dogen, he's a founder of our school, the Soto Zen school in Japan. That's his portrait there. And he was born in 1200. So this is, we're using this kind of as a supplemental text for our Ango. This is Dogen's Shobo Genzo Zui Monki. So it's also has Dogen's waka poems, which are short poems that he wrote, and commentary by Okamura. So this book's edited and translated by Shohaka Okamura. So I just wanted to read one of his waka poems. This is number 4. There aren't too many of them. It's a pretty big book. Illuminated by the moon, dwelling in the quiet mind, even the waves are dissolving into light. And this is Okamura Roshi's commentary. The quiet mind is the mind in Zazen. In the fascicle of the Shobo Genzo called 8 Aspects of the Awakening of Great Beings, Dogen Zenji quotes the sutra on teachings bequeathed by the Buddha. The third is to enjoy serenity, departing from crowds and noise, and staying alone in a quiet place is called enjoying serenity. Serenity is a translation of Jugoji, which means quiet, tranquil, serene, or solitary. This doesn't mean silent, simply means silent or without external noise. When our minds are torn, there's always dispute, conflict, or anxiety. Such conditions make our minds unsettled and agitated. Often when we sit in the quiet zendo, we begin to hear noise from inside ourselves, Our zazen of letting go of thoughts enables us to sit imperturbably without being pulled around by internal or external conditions. In this waka, Dogen describes zazen using the scenery of a rocky coast where the waves incessantly hit the rocks and break into tiny drops of water. In each and every drop, the moonlight is reflected. In our zazen, thoughts, images, emotions, and memories are like waves constantly coming and going. But when we let go of them, they cease to be our thinking. Thoughts are coming and going, but we don't think. We're not deceived or controlled by the thoughts. We do not take any action based on the waves. Within zazen, each thought coming and going without being grasped becomes simply the serenity of our zazen. He goes on to relate this to a passage in the Genjo koan. I will just end with this last part. He's talking about another similar waka, and some earlier teachers talked about just serenity in this. And he made a point to criticize that. He says, here Dogen says, his practice of zazen is not a method of stopping the winds of ignorance. This is renouncing thinking and making the ocean surface completely quiet so it can reflect things as they are. Rather, in this waka, Dogen says that even the waves of thought and delusion themselves turn into moonlight. So it's not just being calm, is what he's saying. We're accepting, not rejecting our thinking. Okay, I think that is all for today. Thank you very much.